chicken is we're just going to cook it with sage only. One of the things about sage is that it's really best when you use it by itself. That keeps the flavor nicely, and a lot of times it doesn't complement it well to mix it with other herbs. So the sage is sort of rubbery, the skin or the leaves themselves, and they're easy to cut just like this when you stack them up into a neat stack like I have here. And that way you can just make a chiffonade or a julienne of the fresh herbs. So we're going to put a lot of herbs here. I have some underneath the chicken, totally surrounding the chicken, and inside the chicken. I'm also going to put inside the chicken some onion and some lemon. And then fill it up with some more herbs. You can never get too much sage. You know, dry sage loses a little bit of its flavor. What I'm going to do is make a pocket here and put some of these chiffonade of basil underneath the skin, because this way it'll infuse into the meat and we can remove it later. It smells great. When you make dried sage, and a lot of different herbs as well, a lot of the flavor goes away, but it seems to be especially noticeable with sage. And so that's why I really like to grow fresh sage. Let's see, I got sage everywhere, don't I? I still have another piece here. One of these chickens in the oven about 2.5 hours ago. Normally it could cook, it's only 4 pounds, and it could normally cook in about 1 hour and 20 minutes. But I like to slow roast it. I do eat my main meal of the day in the morning, and so because I work in the evening, and I can put this in the oven about 9 o'clock and slow roast it at a little bit under 300 degrees. And this chicken is cooked to perfection, slow roast. Oh wow, smell those herbs. And this one is ready to go in. So when you slow roast, I use a temperature set just under 300 degrees, and then I can go out and do errands. I can go to the Y and do my workout, and chicken's ready. Right. So they are easy to strip, all of them. You just strip it back, and that's, I think, one of the things that a lot of people, one of the reasons why they don't deal with fresh herbs is because they don't know how to clean them. So you just strip it backwards and then pull it forwards, and that takes all the delicate leaves off. So we're going to make a couple different things here. What we're going to do is store them. And that's the problem, as I said earlier, when you store them, is you don't always have them when you need them. So if you can process them, and we're going to chop all these up. Now, so when you put them, buy dried herbs, they've lost a lot of their essential oils. But when you have nice and fresh ones, they keep those essential oils. When you raise your own herbs, they're not hybridized. One of the things about herbs is they're mainly a wild species, as opposed to a lot of the other vegetables that we grow. So herbs are trouble-free. They grow fast, and they're easy to deal with. All right, and so as I said about the sage, the chopper machine gadget doesn't work very well. So you do cut that one by hand, and what we're going to do is freeze these herbs instead of drying them. Because when you freeze the herbs, we're going to protect the essential oils. You know, you can tell that us human beings don't have the same relationship with nature as we used to. Back in the days bygone, there was thousands and thousands of herbs. They used them for medicinal, magical purposes, used them for health reasons, pretty much anything. All the plants in the world were divided up into 3 categories: trees, shrubs, and herbs. Even in the Bible, they talked about the grasses being herbs. So you can show how much distance we've come from nature in these days. So it's a good idea to get back to nature and grow some herbs. Today, most people only think a couple dozen herbs that there are, and there was thousands. So we're going to freeze these herbs, and the best way to freeze them is to protect them with a little bit of oil. So all you want to do is process your herbs, and I put way too much oil in there. And just put a little bit of olive oil in. And that way, the olive oil, you make it like a wet sand. You could use canola oil as well. It depends on whether you want to have the olive flavor. If you don't want that olive flavor in some of your dishes, you would use canola oil instead. So what you do is just wet it with like a little wet sand, and then you can freeze this. And what's going to happen is that the olive oil or canola oil is going to protect the herb, seal in that essential oils, and when you go to get it out and make your recipe, it's going to be frozen, but you'll be able to take a knife and just take a little bit out of the freezer and stir it into your stew. So when you do this, or whatever you're making, your sauté dish, it preserves the delicate balance of the oils, but it just changes texture just a little bit. But normally when you cook with it, it's not going to matter so much. So it captures that garden flavor and brings it into your kitchen in the middle of winter. And so I'm going to use the oregano, and I have the thyme in here. Put a little bit of garlic in this one as well. Now, rosemary was the herb of lovers, and they use oregano to make crowns or garlands for bridal parties. One of the things lately is that there's been like a resurgence in the use of herbs, and I think that might have a little bit to do with the fact that we've been experimenting with we've become more global. There's a wider variety of cuisines we're using on a regular basis, and so people are more open to using different herbs and becoming exposed to more exotic herbs. These herbs aren't exotic at all, really. These are the basics. Now, everything we've done so far you can do with almost any herbs. Some of the herbs, like, say, basil, are really going to discolor when they freeze, but the flavor is going to be the same. So as long as you're cooking with it, it's not going to matter that much. So herbs bring a lot of extra nutrition into your diet. And you know those things I was telling you about shyness and health reasons, they didn't just make that stuff up. They probably discovered that people who use these herbs had better medicinal values. So it's a good way to bring a lot of variety and a lot of health into your diet. And it can transform a plain old meal. And a lot of people want to use just plain old fresh herbs. So the easiest way to store herbs fresh is just to have a nice Tupperware thing, put a little bit of damp paper towel in the bottom. It could be a generic plastic container as well. And just lay your herbs right down in there and put a damp paper towel over top of it, just like that. And what you're going to find when you store your herbs this way is you'll be amazed at how long they will keep with just like that in your refrigerator. The only real way to clean greens properly is by dunking them like this. When you wash them through a colander, it really doesn't do the job right, especially these curly ones like this. So you dunk it, and then when you take them out, just give it a second there to sit. Let the sand fall down into the bottom. And when you take them out, if your sink looks really dirty and sandy, which it does not, then you would wash them again. So my other greens are a lot bigger. This is the collard greens. It's pretty much the same thing. You want to have plenty of room. Don't try to do it in a really small bowl or a colander, because it's just not going to do the job. We'll sit for a minute. And if you're using a bowl, you wouldn't want to pour the water out, because then you're pouring the sand back through your lettuces. You let the sand fall to the bottom, and then you pick your lettuces out of the water. A tomato provençal, which is a stuffed tomato, and we're going to saute these mushrooms really quick. Back here, have a nice hot pan. And we'll put a little bit of olive oil in there just for flavor, I think. Just a touch. Oil is your good oil choice. Canola oil, cauliflower oil are your best olive choices. Now the lemon juice is going to add a little bit of flavor, as well as help to keep our tomatoes white. So now I need to just add the rest of my ingredients. There's a plum tomato. Now you can see here that I have already cut 4 plum tomatoes, and they're ready to be stuffed. I'll put a little bit of whole grain breadcrumbs. Now what I did was buy whole grain bread and used a coffee grinder to grind it up. This is some nice fresh oregano. Now if you want to use dry oregano, use about half as much. Whenever you're doing substitutions, we're going to put about, we don't need too much here, about a tablespoon in there. So if you were using dry, you'd really only use a teaspoon or a half a tablespoon. And then some fresh grated Parmesan cheese. Where is that? Now tomatoes are nature's best source of lycopene. Lycopene is your natural antioxidant. It's the secret to lifelong good health. But lycopene not only reduces your chance of heart disease, but has lots of other great benefits. You know the old saying, an apple a day? Well, you know, they meant to say tomatoes or tomatoes. A tomato a day keeps the doctor away, you know. All right, I think I have it all here. What I want to do quickly is just lightly sprinkle I'm going to use a kosher salt here, my tomatoes with a little bit of salt, and then stuff them. So in the wintertime, a lot of times your tomatoes, you know, in the grocery store, it's hard to find a good tomato. So one thing for sure is that you want to keep your tomatoes at room temperature. You always store your tomatoes in a bowl on your counter, because that's the way to preserve their best flavors. So lycopene fights osteoporosis as well. Ooh, cooked to perfection until I smashed them. Now we're cooking. Now this fresh basil, this is the best way to buy it. It's in a root ball, and it's going to stay fresher this way. You just keep the root ball wet and keep it in a cool, dry place. Don't touch it. Once you touch it, the heat from your hands starts the deterioration process of your basil. Oh, I love the smell of basil. I just want a little bit of it. This is called a chiffonade, which just means it's like torn lettuce. Stringy. It's not caramelized. 17 ounces of balsamic vinegar. And that's what I have in this pot here. And what I'm going to do is reduce that, and then it's going to be like honey consistency. And that will be a reduction. And that is a balsamic vinegar. And then we ended up with maple syrup or honey consistency of about a quarter or a third of a cup of balsamic glaze. Another wilted bitter greens is next on Grinnin' for Greens. And I'm going to add my garlic. That was about 3 cloves of garlic. Now this green, it doesn't matter whether you're growing your own greens or whether you're buying them in the grocery store. All different kinds of greens have all different kinds of flavor. This I already washed, like we did earlier. I just took it and put it down in there and sloshed it up and down like that, and all curly endive. And this is definitely a bitter green. I'm not going to use a whole lot of it. And then I thought we'd add some spinach to our wilted bitter greens. I have the spinach already washed. Now this is a curly spinach, and it came in a bag that said pre-washed. Now just because it says pre-washed, you should still wash it again, because they use a lot of pesticides on lettuces, and that surprises me sometimes when you read about that. And also, did you know that 14 people handle every fruit, not every, but most 14 people handle your fruits and vegetables before they get to your dinner table. That's not counting your family. So you do want to wash it even if it looks clean, and if the water's dirty, as I said earlier, you double or triple wash it. So this is a curly spinach, and I always wash it even though it says washed. So when you clean spinach, you want to get that stem out. So what you do is you hold it upside down like this and just pull that stem out just like that. So you do want to take that coarse rib out all the way up. And I don't think we're going to use all this spinach, but we'll use some of it. Don't be afraid to try different kinds of greens. Spinach is one of the greens that wilts down into almost nothing. Like you could put this in a skillet and probably wilt it down to 2 portions if you wanted. Let's see here. It smells good already. I could eat this just as it is. Now I want to add my pasta. And I decided to use a whole grain pasta. Right here, handy. And this is a whole grain and spinach pasta. Now I'm going to put a little bit of water in here. If I had thought ahead, planned ahead, I could have saved a little bit of pasta water. Don't forget to grin for greens. And we did use whole wheat and spinach fettuccine. And you don't cook too long after you get your greens in there. They'll wilt down too much. Most people overcook greens. Did you ever have spinach and it's like, well, that's just because it's overcooked. Now you could decorate this if you'd like with some fresh grated Parmesan cheese, or maybe even a shaved cheese. You can shave some more Parmesan cheese onto your pasta. That looks nice. Oh, how about a sprig of oregano? Now I've been telling you the whole show that I have a surprise. So frisee is another bitter green. Now it's white and green combined, and the white part is a little more bitter than the green part. I'll put that on there. And now I want to put something a little in here, because you've heard of green eggs and ham. We have greens and eggs. Balsamic reduction is just a reduced balsamic vinegar, not green eggs and ham. One more quick idea for greens. I have here this is a coral leaf lettuce, also known as red tip. You can use it for a bed, for a nice barbecue salad, put a hot barbecue on it, or you could even roll it up if you wanted, like this, like a wrap. So my name is Deb Bixler. You're watching Now We're Cooking. Grinning for greens. Don't forget to get your greens, and don't be afraid of different kinds. We'll have to think of a grinning for greens for dessert.